The scent of fresh espresso and toasted almond scones, a deliberate and comforting aroma, filled the kitchen when I came downstairs. My mother, Eleanor, had already arranged the plates on the marble island, each with a linen napkin fanned out beside it. It was a gesture she'd perfected, a piece of domestic stagecraft. She used to make them when I was drowning in coursework for my cartography finals in college, a small silent ritual of support. For a fleeting foolish moment, I let the nostalgia convince me it still meant something. "I'll only be in Boise for 3 days, maybe even 2, I said, sliding onto a stool. "It's just a final consultation for that urban planning map. The good news is, I start the full-time JS gig at the firm on Monday." She nodded, her eyes fixed on the tablet propped against a bowl of decorative, unnaturally shiny apples. "That's wonderful, dear." It was an automatic response, the verbal equivalent of a pat on the head, devoid of any genuine warmth. Her thumb swiped across the screen. "The caterer for the foundation gala is being difficult about the canapés. Can you imagine? After all the exposure we give them." "That sounds stressful," I offered, trying to find a foothold in her world. "I know it's not as glamorous as Chloe's influencer brand," I tried again. "But the benefits are incredible. Full medical, a 401k. I'll finally be able to pay back the last of that $6,500 I owe you. I can have the first check to you in 2 weeks." A distracted was her only reply. She angled the tablet away when I glanced over, a subconscious act of exclusion. I focused on my scone, the buttery flakes tasting like ash in my mouth. "Don't make it weird," I chanted internally. "She let you move back in when your freelance contract ended. She didn't have to do that." The thought felt less like gratitude and more like a debt I was constantly being silently billed for. Just then, Chloe breezed into the kitchen, already dressed in pastel athletic wear. She ignored me, grabbing a sponsored energy drink from the fridge and filming it for her Instagram story. "Fueling up for a killer workout, fam," she chirped at her phone before turning to our mother. "Daddy said the numbers for his 3rd quarter are looking soft. Maybe a little family crisis content would boost engagement?" Eleanor simply smiled, a silent co-conspirator. When I stood to leave, Eleanor finally looked up from her crisis of canapés. "Travel safe, Alara." She rose and kissed the air near my cheek, her perfume enveloping me in a cloud of expensive indifference. She gave me a one-armed hug, a gesture so practiced it felt like we were on stage for an invisible audience. Then she returned to her tablet, her focus already gone. As I loaded my survey equipment into the trunk, I saw the upstairs curtain twitch. A flicker of movement, then nothing. It was the feeling I always had in that house, of being watched but never truly seen. The drive back from Boise was filled with a quiet sense of triumph. The project had been a success, and the client was thrilled. I felt a budding optimism I hadn't allowed myself in months. I pictured coming home, maybe treating the family to dinner at that new Italian place downtown to celebrate my new job. I felt a naive surge of hope that this time, things might be different. I got home at 11:18 p.m. on a Thursday, a full day ahead of schedule. The familiar smell of rain-soaked asphalt and pine was a welcome comfort as I turned onto our street in the Portland suburbs. But then I saw them. Black contractor bags, at least a dozen, slumped along the curb like casualties of war in the drizzling rain. My drafting table, a gift from my great-aunt, was in pieces near the mailbox, its splintered legs pointing accusingly at the sky. A favorite ceramic mug, the one I used every morning, lay shattered on the pavement. Socks, technical manuals, and rolls of precious, completed map paper spilled from a ripped bag, the ink bleeding in the rain. My expensive wide-format plotter, a machine I'd saved for 2 years to buy, sat uncovered, its delicate sensors exposed to the damp night air. It was a targeted, meticulous destruction. Beyond the wreckage stood my family, illuminated by the harsh glare of the porch light. My mother Eleanor held her phone, narrating with the calm, therapeutic voice she used for her modern parenting blog. Beside her, my sister Chloe had her own phone outstretched, broadcasting live to her tens of thousands of followers. I could hear Chloe's chipper voice cut through the sound of the rain. And here she is, back from another work trip, still owing my parents over $6,000 after living here rent-free for a year. Take a good look, guys. This is what weaponized incompetence looks like. Sometimes you have to burn it all down to build a boundary. My brother, Liam paced back and forth, vibrating with a pent-up aggression that finally had a target. He spotted my car, a cruel smirk spreading across his face, and deliberately kicked a heavy box. I heard the sickening crunch of glass as my framed university degrees shattered. "About time," he growled. "The resident freeloader has officially been evicted." I felt the air leave my lungs in a silent gasp. My mother raised her phone higher, her voice crisp and performative. "Alara Vance, 30 years old. We gave her a hand up and she tried to make it a handout. Tonight we're teaching a hard lesson in accountability. It's painful, but it's for her own good." A few neighbors were watching. Mr. Gable from next door was filming from his window. The Hendersons stood on their porch, motionless, their faces pale in the porch light. Mrs. Henderson made eye contact with me for a split second, her expression a mixture of pity and fear, before her husband pulled her back inside. No one spoke. No one intervened. My humiliation was their evening's entertainment. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. A strange cold calm settled over me. I just started picking things up. I rescued my atlases first, my fingers numb as I wiped mud from a 19th century map of the Oregon Trail. I loaded my car in a silent, methodical rhythm while Chloe's voice provided a running commentary on my hoarding tendencies and lack of gratitude. When the trunk was full, I closed it softly and turned to face them. They were still filming, their faces set in masks of self-righteousness, waiting for the climax of their drama. "I hope the content was worth it," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You'll be hearing from me." As I opened my car door, the front door of the house slammed open. My father, Robert, stormed down the walkway, his face a thundercloud. He didn't say a word. He just hurled a set of keys at me. They clattered off the car window and fell into the gutter with a splash. "Take your car and get off my property," he snarled, his voice thick with contempt. "You're a tenant who defaulted. We don't owe you a thing. Consider this your lesson in the real world." I met his glare, my own expression unreadable. I bent down, picked the keys out of the murky water, and got into the car. I didn't look back. The first 24 hours at Maya's apartment were a blur of shock. I didn't sleep. I sat on her sofa, wrapped in a blanket, and stared at the wall while the city woke up and went to sleep again. Maya moved around me with quiet purpose, making tea I didn't drink, offering food I couldn't eat. She didn't push me to talk. She just sat with me during her lunch break, working on her laptop, her presence a silent, solid anchor in the storm. It was her fury that finally broke my paralysis. "They didn't just throw out your stuff, Alara," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "They curated it. They picked the things that meant the most to you and destroyed them for an audience. That isn't a lesson. It's a ritual of cruelty." Her words pierced through the numbness. She was right. It wasn't an impulse. It was a production. It was then that I remembered the cedar chest. After retrieving the box and discovering its contents, I felt the first flicker of something other than pain. A cold, sharp resolve. The next morning I called Marcus Thorne. My first meeting with him was in a quiet, book-lined office that smelled of old paper and leather. He listened to the entire story without interruption, his expression calm but his eyes growing harder as I spoke. When I finished, he looked down at the documents from Aunt Genevieve. "Your great-aunt was a remarkable woman," he said. "And she was right to be cautious. What your family has done isn't just immoral, Alara. It's illegal on several fronts. The eviction is a clear violation of your rights as a property owner. But the rental income, that's a breach of fiduciary duty. It's fraud." He explained the legal terms with a patient clarity that empowered me. "Our first step is to formally notify them of our legal representation and demand a full accounting of all properties held in the trust. Their response will tell us everything we need to know." The response came from their lawyer, a man whose letterhead was as pompous as his prose. It was dismissive, referring to the situation as a minor family misunderstanding, and my claims as unfounded and emotionally driven. It was the legal equivalent of being told I was being dramatic. Mr. Thorne's reply was a formal petition to the court, including subpoenas for all financial records and rental platform data associated with the Cannon Beach cottage. "Now we wait for the data," he said. "And the data doesn't have emotions." A week later, an email from him landed in my inbox. Attached was a spreadsheet, It was 4 years of my life quantified in betrayal. Line after line of anonymous renters, weekend getaways, summer holidays, and the corresponding payments that flowed directly into my father's business account. The total at the bottom was stark: $72,350. Seeing the raw numbers, the sheer scale of their long-term deception, solidified my resolve into steel. Liam's confrontation in my new office lobby was an act of desperation. He tried to grab my arm, his voice a low hiss. "You're going to destroy Dad's business. Mom is a wreck. This has to stop." I didn't flinch. I pulled out my phone and said, "Security is on their way, Liam." He recoiled as if burned, his bluster vanishing under the fluorescent lights of a place where he had no power. The consequences began to cascade. Maya sent me a link to a popular Portland lifestyle blog under the headline, "Local influencer Chloe Vance livestreams cruelty for clicks." The author had been tipped off by one of my neighbors. The article was brutal, contrasting Chloe's curated image of positivity and wellness with screenshots from her eviction video. The comments were a tidal wave of disgust. Within a week, her partnership with a major activewear brand was publicly terminated. Next came the fallout for my father. Mr. Thorne forwarded me an email from the bank's legal counsel. The loan application was not just frozen. It had triggered a full audit of Robert's business due to material misrepresentation of assets and ownership. The storefront he'd leveraged as entirely his own was now a red flag that threatened to unravel his entire financial standing. Then came the email from my mother, sent to my old personal address. It was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. "Alara, your father isn't sleeping. His blood pressure is through the roof. What you are doing is tearing apart the very fabric of this family over money. Money that paid for your college, that put a roof over your head. Is this how you repay us? I don't even know who you are anymore." I read it twice, and for the first time, I felt nothing but a profound, hollow sadness for the woman who saw love as a transaction and truth as a betrayal. I forwarded it to Mr. Thorne without comment. Their lawyer's next communication was a complete reversal. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate urgency. Their first lowball offer was a test to see if I would break. When I didn't and the public and financial pressure mounted, they folded. The final agreement was drafted entirely on our terms. The day I signed the documents in Mr. Thorne's office was quiet and anticlimactic. There was no celebration, only a sense of grim finality. I stared at the signature lines for Robert, Eleanor, Chloe, and Liam, and added my own sentence at the bottom. "Accountability is not an attack. It is the consequence of the truth." My new apartment is small, with a view of the Fremont Bridge and floors that creak. The lease is in my name, paid for by my new salary. The first cashier's check for the back rent arrived by courier. Clipped to it was the note from my mother. "We hope this is a first step toward healing for all of us." I filed it away. Healing was my business, not hers. That night, unpacking the cedar chest, I found the USB drive. I listened to Genevieve's voice, a message from the past that was lighting my future. 2 months later, after the third payment had cleared and the third-party management company was firmly in control of the properties, I drove out to the coast. I had the keys to the Cannon Beach cottage in my hand, keys Mr. Thorne had to formally demand. The air was crisp with salt and sea. The cottage was small and weathered, with gray shingles and a blue door. Inside, it smelled faintly of them, of Chloe's floral perfume and my mother's expensive air freshener. They had left in a hurry. A few fashion magazines were on the coffee table, a half-empty bottle of wine on the counter. I spent the afternoon cleaning. I opened all the windows, letting the ocean breeze chase out the last remnants of their presence. I packed a box with their leftover belongings and left it for the property manager to deal with. In the back of a closet, I found a small dusty box. Inside was not theirs but Genevieve's. A collection of sea glass she had gathered. A few old black and white photos of her on this very beach, smiling, her face to the wind. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light across the now empty living room, I sat on the floor, looking out at the waves. The shouting was over. The performance had ended. This was real. This was mine. And in the silence, listening to the rhythm of the tide, I could finally hear myself begin. Wow, what a story, right? From the absolute bottom, humiliated on her own front lawn with her life in garbage bags, to standing strong in a home that was truly hers. It's an incredible journey of finding strength when you're pushed to your absolute limit. Alara's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the people who are supposed to be your safest harbor are actually the storm. I have to ask you guys, what part of this story hit you the hardest? For me, it was that hollow self-serving note from her mother with the first check. It just showed that they still didn't get it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I read every single one. If you found Alara's journey to justice as compelling and powerful as I did, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It tells YouTube that you value these kinds of stories and helps the channel grow. And if you're new here and want more tales of betrayal, resilience, and ultimate vindication, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you so much for spending your time here with me today. Remember to know your worth, protect your peace, and I'll see you in the next story.